The agenda this week questioned Canada's inattention to intellectual property, heard the case for a Toronto-Waterloo tech corridor, and learned how Canada's new chief science advisor wants to get good science helping to make better government policy. The agenda's Week in Review now begins with the business of legalizing marijuana. Matei, let me make the comparison to craft breweries, of which there were, I guess, about 30 7 years ago, and today there are almost 200 in the province. This has really taken off. Do you see something similar happening in the cannabis business?
My guess would be an educated guess. I think a good data point is to remember that in Ontario today, there are more private doors to alcohol than public. So by that I mean combining the amount of wine racks, beer stores, and grocery stores on the aggregate, there are more doors to those types of establishments than to an LCBO. That took time. You know, we all celebrated the beer in the grocery stores just a few short years ago and heralded it as a massive change in the way Ontarians think about alcohol and where it can be bought. And keeping in mind the stage that we are now in cannabis, 1 year before recreational cannabis even exists, I think there is an opportunity for more private doors to exist in the long run than public. And looking out west, we have seen the BC government signal not one way or another clearly yet, but they have not closed the door on current operators or growers in the retail or growing space in Vancouver, perhaps giving a head nod to the IP that exists there, but also the livelihood that people have built up and kind of the economy that is around cannabis.
But Vancouver did something that no one else in the country has, as far as I know, which under frustration from the old Harper government's inaction, they actually moved, I'm going to use the expression, to legitimize their dispensaries, put them through a municipal planning process, some closed, forced to move, distance from school, these kind of considerations. 15 of them or something like that have been sort of validated. And this is the backyard of the justice minister also, so you can imagine the Vancouver politics must factor into this nationally. But that's the only place in the country where there's been any of that step towards dispensary level legitimization.
And Victoria as well.
Oh, Victoria followed suit on Vancouver, you're correct, yeah.
Do you imagine a time when, I mean, I think it was a Liberal government 35 years ago or so, not 35, 32 years ago, that promised beer and wine in stores, breaking up the monopoly of the LCBO.
I remember campaigning on the beer store in the East Mall by Cloverdale Mall in favor in the '85 election.
Right. So it only took 3 decades for it to happen, and now one wonders whether the same kind of analogy is appropriate for cannabis, in as much as we're going to start to see it decentralized eventually as well.
Well, you can see the strong instinct on the part of the government here in Ontario is no, and they were clear about it. And you say LCBO got their marching orders a month ago is not true. The national government and the province have been working in parallel and sharing information for a long time, and Ontario's had a very, very well-evolved internal process. I had a chance to see some elements of that, so I don't think it exactly hit them with surprise, but I do accept the point that they're not exactly a bunch of people there that have history in the sector. Personally, I think that the model around this, firstly, we think about the private doors and public doors. Ontario regrets very much that the wine rack has all that business, and if they could do it over with Brewers Retail, they probably would also. So I don't know if that's just a perfect reflection on the regulatory environment and mindset in Ontario. I hope that there will be evolution in this so that the people that are part and parcel of the culture can have a hand in providing product in interesting ways and also in creating the best economic opportunities. Because I think one of the things, you're in the business of expos, I think, in part. So here we have a problem is, mail order is great. Amazon's going to have another head office because so many people are happy to buy their stuff that way. But first I have to be comfortable with a product, and there is no means by which I can do that. And I wonder whether an evolved model of expos, as an example, might provide, and maybe that's more challenging regionally, and I'm pretty focused on remoteness, but provide a place where a new consumer or an existing one might actually be able to interface with the product. Can we see the Alcohol and Gaming Commission emerge in a way that it starts to create a regime, if you will, a regulatory regime that allows for adults to come together and to actually experience the product?
You kind of do this,
right now there's a big gap
for the
there.
last 20 years, yeah.
Hotbox Cafe?
That's what I do.
Tell us about that.
All right. So for the last almost 20 years, that is essentially what we've been doing is we allow adults, it was 18 plus, now it's 19 plus, to come in with their own cannabis. They can sit, socialize with it, get to know it. We offer Our staff is very knowledgeable. We offer assistance.
Where is this place?
It's in Kensington Market in Toronto.
downtown
You actually
Toronto.
did an episode of The Agenda in 2003 about it, many years ago. But this model hasn't exploded in the last 20 years since we opened. There's only, I think, about 9 of them in all of Ontario. I wish there were more.
Why is it legal?
It's not legal, but it's not illegal. It's aiding and abetting possession, essentially, which is a half a possession count. So to a charge that will most likely get dropped. And we actually offer a service. If you talk to any police officer in my neighborhood or anybody in my community, they actually really appreciate the fact that people aren't sitting in parks. They're not sitting in the alleyways. They're not sitting in their cars and consuming cannabis in their cars, rolling in their cars, right? So, and this is actually a point that I've been making for a very long time, asking for licensing. We pay all our taxes, all our payroll taxes.
Okay,
very
except
much
that the new regime that comes in is supposed to allow the consumption of this product only at home, not in a storefront business.
Which may work if you live in the country and you have the luxury of outdoor public space, but in a city like the city of Toronto, where 50% of the people rent, and you know, about 70% of people live in very close proximity dwellings.
When a patient comes to you and says, I'm experiencing X, Y, and Z, could you prescribe me some marijuana, please? What do you do?
So, first of all, are they using cannabis? Because one of the things that was happening, a lot of people would come in and they weren't disclosing that they're already using cannabis as a medication or to self-treat, whatever that case is. So the first question is, are you a user or are you a non-user? And if you are a user, it's a completely different ballgame in terms of prescribing. I'm going to focus on the non-user first.
Okay.
So the non-user first that comes into my pain clinic and says, I want cannabis for pain, first of all, we have to look back and see, well, what are you actually doing? What are you using for pain? And there is a clear pathway created by the Canadian Pain Society for neuropathic pain. And you start with your neuropathic pain meds, and then you move to potentially an opioid or a cannabis. And there's a big debate right now as to whether or not that cannabis and opioid discussion should actually be flipped, and maybe we can bring it in a little bit earlier. But for now, we hold tight, and the opioids are still above the cannabinoids. Now, if a patient doesn't want an opioid for various reasons, as you've talked about earlier in terms of the crisis, et cetera, and they've tried those neuropathic pain meds, it's absolutely reasonable now to trial cannabis. Some will say you trial the synthetic version first, so a nabilone, the pill version of cannabis that we have, the THC, synthetic THC, sorry, that we have to use for patients before you move to the bud. And then absolutely you would consider that in that naive patient. Now, the person who walks into the office already consuming cannabis and saying that this is something that now I want to use more legitimately, I absolutely would have that discussion. One, from a harm reduction perspective. So now you're taking that person out of an environment, and I've had patients that have been stabbed and things of that. You know, it's not always like that, but you know, you ask some questions and you figure out how can you help this individual, not just from the medical side, but even from a harm reduction standpoint. And certainly moving to a legal system where they can have it arrive at their house is very reasonable.
Got a guess at what percentage of your patients you have prescribed cannabis for? I'm
going to say 15 sounds about right, 15 to 20%.
So not that much at this point.
No, because it's not the utopia of society, right? It is for the right patient, the right condition at the right time. If I were to own a cannabis clinic, I probably that answer would be 100%.
Right.
Right. So you know, I'm not in the business of prescribing cannabis for the sake of prescribing cannabis. I prescribe it for the appropriate condition to the appropriate patient to try to help them.
One hears, you tell me if it's true, but one hears that medical marijuana, being a plant-based thing, can be healthier to help you deal with whatever ailment you're dealing with than, say, a pharmacological product, a Tylenol or an Advil or something like that. Would you say that?
It's a great story. It's a great story in terms of the plant is better. We're in a very organic time in our culture. We want everything to be farm to table. But let's face it, what ultimately is going to have a physiologic effect is that molecule that affects the receptor. And so whether it is in the plant and you consume it, or it is synthetically made and it attacks that receptor, you're going to have the effect.
Pina, you raised the issue of the federal budget last year, which for the first time, intellectual property is actually sort of right there baked into the budget plan. Okay, when you saw that, what did you think?
Well, hallelujah. So many throne speeches and just budgets passed me by. I wasn't taking out the popcorn watching them. especially for an IP scholar, you'd want to see that vision at the very top, which has been lacking for so many years.
So what does it suggest to you?
So it suggests that finally the government is getting it, and that finally perhaps we're gonna all start to, come up with that hymn book and start singing the same tune. Because I think also, I worked in Ottawa for a bit, and there are many different departments that all deal with IP, frankly, and they just don't realize it. So you usually have the usual suspect shops in Ottawa that deal with IP, and I think it needs to be more pervasive across Ottawa, not have a siloed approach. So I think with a vision from the very top is what we need. But then, backing that vision, the resources need to come. So like what you suggested, Dan, with Israel, how year and year after year, Israel commits money to this. It can't just be a one-off now and not have a sustainable strategy going forward. It's too important for it not to be the case.
So they get it, Dan. They get, in principle, that IP is now on the agenda, if I can use that expression. What specifically did they do?
Well, in terms of the clustering initiative, right, they are actually pouring money into clusters. The question is there a sufficient scale there? If you think about, for example, what an Elon Musk will be putting, into one of his projects, the amount of money that we're putting into clusters across Canada pales by comparison.
Well, I know, we got $950 million. Is that chicken feed?
But the other thing with the cluster,
So let me be very, very clear, okay? If you remember budgets by budget of this government, we had the cluster from the beginning. We just didn't have super, they were called clusters, and they have 800 instead of 950. Now divide 950 by 5, then put it all across Canada. It's chicken feed.
Chicken feed.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So they get it, but they didn't get it enough.
I would go further, with all due respect to our beloved government. I actually think ISED and Minister Baines gets it.
This is Navdeep Baines, who's the minister in charge.
And I think he hired really good people on the IP and others. Yeah. However, I look at the Ministry of Finance and our beloved Prime Minister, and I don't see them giving them any new resources. What I see is a lot of talk, but I look at the budget, and working in public policy, I believe it only when you give resources, you're serious about something as a politician. I don't see a transfer of budget.
Dan Churiak, they've got advanced manufacturing that they're going to fund, agri-food, clean tech, digital technology, health biosciences, clean resources, infrastructure, transportation. Sounds like a pretty good list.
The list is correct. It's a question of the scale of the money that you're putting in. But let me flip back to the question of data. We are signing on to international treaties where we agree that data should be able to flow freely across borders with no data localization. Now, so go back to Dan's John Deere tractor. It means that the data generated in Canada should flow freely across borders to whoever can capture that and is not retained in Canada, is not capitalized in Canada, is not monetized in Canada. Now, if we were to go back 100 years and were to say, well, we should have a free flow of oil across borders and anyone should be able to come in here and take the oil royalty-free, that wouldn't sound like such a good idea. No. But I'm not saying that we should put a tax on data or try to charge for it, because Canadians get benefits from being able to use Google, right? And from using Facebook. But the issue across the board when we talk about smart houses, smart cars, smart tractors, is who captures that data. And if Canada does not capture its fair share of it, we will not have a foothold in the future data-driven economy, and that is going to dominate. Right now...
so that comes down to the IP, right? The IP is the bedrock to it. So going back to also the superclusters, AI is one of them.
Artificial intelligence.
Yeah, artificial intelligence. So what might be encouraging is that the government has mandated that they all have an IP strategy. So, okay, finally, right?
So that's good.
That's good.
Like that.
But
that's only 50 years too late, but yeah.
No, but what also might be problematic, or at least it gives me a sense of pause, is when I see the number of partners that these superclusters are bringing in. While I'm all about inclusivity and cooperation, more collaboration, 70, 80 partners, some of them have upwards of hundreds. How do you figure out the IP there? Presumably, they're bringing in IP to generate more IP. Who's going to own it? So they need to be very clear from the get-go, or we don't want now a mecca of litigation coming out of these superclusters, right? So I think...
Can I just bring it back to the money, though, for a second?
Yeah.
If not, I mean, it's almost $1 billion, admittedly, divided by regions, divided by sectors. Okay, so it's not that much money, you suggest, at the end of the day. If they were really serious about it, what kind of nut are we looking at?
A way bigger nut, a walnut at least.
So let me give you, let's talk ballparks.
That was good. It's funny.
And I'm just using Israel again because people have been constantly harping on Israel. The Israeli Innovation Agency have more or less $500 million a year to support its activities. And every year it goes slightly up.
It's in a country of 9 million people?
It's Toronto.
It's in a country the size of Toronto?
Yeah.
6
Greater
million.
Toronto, if you want to feel better.
5.5, 6 million people.
Right.
Okay.
They have $500 million. And this is just one government agency. So now let's divide it to Canada. We should start at least by $3 billion, probably more.
I want to strengthen science in Canada, strengthen evidence-based decision-making, create a culture of curiosity. And that's why it's so important that we now have Dr. Niemer as Canada's Chief Science Advisor. And we're delighted.
Okay, that was my nice question. Now here's my nastier question.
Okay.
So why did it take you 2 years to hire her?
I'm glad you've asked. I'm a scientist, and the way I work is slow and methodical. We want to get this position right. We reached out to all parliamentarians. We want to know what this position should look like, our stakeholders across the country. I talked to chief science advisors in Australia, Israel, New Zealand, the United Kingdom, and the United States, and then we created a Made in Canada position. We had a rigorous, comprehensive process, and we've chosen Dr. Niemer.
Is it a permanent position?
And it's permanent. She's appointed for a 3-year term, and we will work to make sure that the Chief Science Advisor has permanence in this country.
Dr. Niemer, your portfolio of interests is incredibly vast. Climate change modeling, artificial intelligence, new medical procedures. How do you stay on top of all of that so you can offer good advice to her and her colleagues?
Yes, that's a question actually I get asked all the time. And I mean,
I didn't claim it was an original question, but I still need to know the answer to it.
Well, you know, that's the difference between generalists and specialists, but also it's about the methodology, right? When you want to answer a question in science, you go about it the same way, whether it's climate change or health or you know, clean water. So you know, I'm going to stay, you know, in some way on top of what's going on, of course, but I will not pretend to be an expert in all fields. And when there would be specific questions asked of me, I'm going to turn to experts. I'm going to help frame the question, you know, and then ask the expert to provide us with advice, or if the advice is out there, you know, collect the advice and sift through it, and then provide recommendations to government.
In some respects, is your job more to be a reminder to politicians that they ought to take science into account when they make decisions?
Well, I hope it's beyond a reminder. It's also, you know, to help them sift through the evidence, translate the evidence, you know, into what does it mean? Because sometimes science is difficult to understand. You know, the data's there, but what does it mean when you're not an expert in the field? And I see my job as one of, you know, translating the data and the evidence.
Budget 2016, the very first budget we brought in, we made a $2 billion investment in research and infrastructure. The previous government also made an investment in infrastructure. But it is not buildings that do research, it is people. And so we made the largest investment in the 3 federal granting councils in a decade. And unlike the previous government, that was unfettered money. The previous government tied funding. So if you wanted a social science and humanities grant, was tied to business.
Since you brought up those 3 funding councils, I want to ask Dr. Niemer's opinion about that. And Sheldon, again, can we have the next graphic up, please? Here's how science funding works in Canada, generally speaking. These 3 granting councils, the Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council, NSERC, the Canadian Institutes of Health Research, the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council. Does that work still?
Well, I'm going to start by saying that, you know, the system works, okay, but doesn't mean it's perfect. And, you know, we need to continue to adapt it to the reality.
So what would be better?
Well, as you know, ask any kids. Do you want to do social sciences? They don't know what you're talking about. Ask them, you know, do you want to make the environment better? Do you want, you know, to help, you know, alleviate poverty? They will understand what that means. So I think we're going to need to, you know, also adapt to the reality that the big problems in society require multiple disciplines and different approaches, and we just need like to more harmonization, you know, and integration among the disciplines to solve the problems, and also to train, you know, the people who are going to be adaptable and who will be able to talk to each other to solve these problems.
Do you think this needs restructuring?
Areas I will focus on will be on governance and coordination, how we bring these granting councils to work better together. I don't want to hear from a researcher again. I can get my lab, I can get my tool, I just can't operate it. We will focus on early career researchers. I have researchers getting their first grant at 43. How do you build a research career if you get your first grant at that late age?
Got to be earlier.
Got to be earlier. Equity and diversity. I want multiple perspectives at the table, and I want to make sure the funding system is more responsive and nimble, that we fund, as Dr. Niemer said, multidisciplinary, multinational, and risky research better in this country.
I was going to ask you how long it took you to get here to our studio today, because, and I'll go to you, Mayor Tory, on this one. I know how you've made traffic congestion a big part of your mayoralty, but let's be real. This is a 3-hour drive if you're lucky, 2 hours sometimes. You know, how do you promote a relationship between these two different cities or this region when you really can't get from one place to another in any kind of time?
Well, you have to undertake initiatives, and the private sector has to help us undertake initiatives like the plane ride, but also other kinds of things. Google, for example, operates a shuttle of their own. Now, it doesn't speed up the traffic, but we've talked before, Barry and I, about using the UPX and having people shuttled to the airport, and then you can get downtown faster and take up some of the time for that drive. But in the end, what we need is a proper train service. The provincial government, to give them their due, have made some improvements to go, but there's much more needed, including in particular this high-speed train, which, as you know, because you're a follower of provincial politics, the high-speed train has been proposed, I think, about 43 times in the last 50 years. This time we actually have to do it because there's a huge amount at stake in terms of jobs, economic development, and quality of life.
Is this part of the pitch?
Absolutely. I mean, that was really what we used a few years ago to launch the idea of two-way all-day go between Kitchener and Toronto. We now have trains that come from Kitchener into Toronto in the mornings and come back in the evenings. The reality is we have as many people working in Waterloo region as we do coming into the GTA. And so we need two-way all-day go happening. The province is committed to that by 2024. We obviously keep the pressure on them going forward. They're in the midst of negotiating a deal with CN, which is a important first step. And as Mayor Tory indicates, the high-speed rail was announced. Timing 2026 is being talked about. And I think as we go into the upcoming provincial election next spring, it's something that certainly we and others plan on keeping at the top of the agenda.
But you probably needed this in yesterday. Not in 2026.
Probably a week ago, actually.
Yeah, okay. Let me read this from the Globe and Mail, and I'll get you guys to comment on this. Sheldon, if you would, let's bring this up. The rise of superclusters, pioneered by Silicon Valley, is fueling explosive growth, creating new industries and reinvigorating traditional companies from Tel Aviv to Amsterdam, London to Berlin, Boston to Austin, Texas. According to McKinsey & Company, estimates based on data from leading technology clusters, the potential economic benefits to building a Canadian supercluster could be massive. A $50 billion increase in equity value, a $17.5 billion annual increase in GDP, and more than 170,000 high-quality jobs. Mayor Tory, what's the biggest thing preventing us from getting to where we are today to this?
Lack of knowledge about the fact that we belong on that list and near the top. You see, we have here, first of all, we have a talent base in size that is, that is right up there with the leading candidates on that list. But secondly, we have a diversity that you can't believe how valuable that is to global companies and to others. Secondly, we have a pipeline of literally hundreds of thousands of bright young people coming through an excellent post-secondary education system, and on it goes. But again, as I said at the outset, we are often the last to sort of, put forward our case aggressively enough to say, look, we're on that list. And now, while that particular quote didn't put the Toronto-Waterloo corridor on the list, I can tell you there are lots of other such lists that do, because people have now recognized the facts have us belong there, not some wish we had to be on lists.
Well, I was going to bring this up later, Sheldon, but roll with me here if you would. Page 4, since the mayor brought it up, let's bring this chart up here. This is a chart indicating the combined equity value of tech companies. They've plucked a few of them here. Silicon Valley obviously is number one, $411 billion worth of tech companies there. But we're number 2. Toronto-Waterloo corridor, $14 billion, and then go down to Vancouver at $6 billion and Montreal at $5 billion. If we, Mayor Verbanovich, if we have this conversation in 5 years' time, again, how different are these numbers going to look?
You know what? I think they have the potential to look much different if we make the right decisions, if we look for ways of collaborating as municipalities, as the private sector, as our academic institutions. I mean, as you know, the federal government right now has a program in place with $950 million at stake in terms of supercluster funding. We just learned today, in fact, that we've made the short list in terms of the corridor for around advanced manufacturing. So we're now in phase 2 of the competition, where 5 projects will essentially get funding out of the 9 that have been shortlisted. And so we were certainly quite excited to partake in that announcement at Mars today and see what happens in the coming months.
And that's, by the way, Steve, us doing that together as a corridor. So when people say, what is this, is it real? We put together the best and the brightest of all the corporate and academic and other resources to make this bid, and it's shortlisted. And so that's a success for this corridor that takes the best and the brightest and that we're stronger together.
But the problem is the word is still not out, right? That is an issue.
Well, sorry.
Oh, look how collegial. I love that. After you, Alphonse. Go ahead.
Well, you know what? I would argue that I think the word is getting out. In fact, we're in the top 20 globally in terms of our startup ecosystems. Toronto gets listed globally as one of the best places to live, often in various indices. These are important things when talent is looking where to locate. And I think the reality is, when we compare ourselves to others in terms of cost of living, cost of setting up shop, Canada more and more is being recognized as the place to be. And this corridor is, because of its talent, its academic institutions and so on, is being recognized as the place to be.
And that is the Agenda's Week in Review for this Friday, October 27th, 2017. You can see all of those conversations in their entirety. They're on our website at tvo.org, on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/theagenda, and thanks to our nightly Twitter live stream on our Periscope page. That's periscope.tv/theagenda.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit tvo.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.